I have a wonderful clip to play for you in just a second. Before doing so, let me break down the context. So we talk a lot on this show about the contrast between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And their respective campaigns could not be more different. Joe Biden running a campaign that centered around policies, his policy record, showing the proof of his governance, and also his policy vision for a second term. Whereas Donald Trump is running a pretty policy-free campaign centered around his own self-identified victimhood. He's treated more poorly than anyone else. That's what people are saying. And retribution, inflicting harm on those he feels wronged by, and then to try to give his supporters a reason to support him despite him not bringing forward meaningful solutions to improve their lives. He fearmongers to a crazy extent. And so networks like Fox News, elected Republicans, other right-wing leaders, they get that. They understand that Biden is both governing and running a campaign that should be, in a reasonable world, would be uncontroversial. His governance is just common sense, reasonable, and uncontroversial. But they have to make it something other than that, right? Because they're trying to serve the interests of Donald Trump. And when Trump has this massive stack of scandals on his side, and Joe Biden just doesn't have any, they have to invent scandals. So that's why we get all these crazy accusations against Joe Biden that James Comer has been investigating, and that sort of seems to have fully collapsed at this point. But it was an attempt to balance the scale a little bit. Trump has real scandals. Let's try to create some fake scandals over here to balance that scale. And we saw over the weekend one of the most desperate attempts at this sort of scandal fabrication that I've seen in a long time. And it was centered around Easter. You may have heard of this outrage already, but Fox News, Republican leaders, right-wing media were working double time to try to create a scandal where it doesn't exist. And it worked. I was hearing even just in personal circles about the conservatives in my life who were so upset by this story that is both based on distortions of facts and is just sort of crazy in what it means about the priorities of these people. So the story goes that Joe Biden, this is the Fox News version, declared Easter Trans Visibility Day. Okay, so he's trying to co-opt Easter, and it's making the Christians angry, and he wants it to just be about trans people or something. Now, in reality, Trans Visibility Day has been on March 31st since 2009. And as you know, Easter is not always on March 31st. It's always on a Sunday, and a particular Sunday at that, often not on March 31st. And so it just so happened, because of those two different ways of deciding the days, that this particular Easter and this particular Trans Visibility Day fell on the same day. And so Joe Biden, because like I said, he's just a reasonable person, he acknowledged both. And that turned into an explosion of rage from the right wing. Again, misconstruing what he was doing, but also just upset either way. And I'll talk more about this, but I feel like that's a strange indictment of your values whenever this makes you so upset. But here is a Fox News correspondent having to come on. And you know how Fox News will throw someone in there to say a little bit of factual information to give themselves plausible deniability with their presentation of facts. And so this correspondent had a chance to come on and essentially wreck their entire bizarre fake scandal.
Hey there, good morning to you guys. Tough conditions out here. It is rainy. We heard some thunder and lightning, and there's also some controversy surrounding the event this year. Transgender Day of Visibility falls on March 31st every year. This year, it coincided with Easter Sunday. And although President Biden, who is Catholic and attends Mass every weekend, issued a statement commemorating Easter Sunday, he also issued a statement marking Transgender Day of Visibility. It reads, "Today on Transgender Day of Visibility, I have a simple message to all trans Americans. I see you. You are made in the image of God, and you are worthy of respect and dignity." Republicans sounded off about that and also about an egg decorating contest for the children of National Guard members. A flyer that was promoting the contest said kids' submissions must not include any questionable content, including religious symbols, overtly religious themes, or partisan political statements. Now, the White House says this restriction has been in place for 47 years, and the American Egg Board told told Fox its rules are mandated by the USDA. But this new contest for the National Guard children was started by the First Lady in 2021, so it appears that her office just co-opted the same rules.
And there she's touching on a second part of the story that we'll get to, also rather absurd. But on the Trans Visibility Day part of this story, obviously an upsetting situation seeing the reaction to this fake story because of it being fake, distorted, diluted, whatever. But also, even setting that aside, the fact that the fake story could bend people this much out of shape and rile people up this much, they were that successful in stoking outrage based on even that telling of the story, is scary. And then when you understand the reality of the story, it's sort of scarring to see people's reaction to it. Meaning, I hate that I know, I hate that I know this about some fellow Americans, that this is how they would react when the President of the United States says, hey, I respect you. I see you. To a marginalized 1% of the population. And that could send people into the atmosphere of rage. That's frightening. And I am referencing personal experience from over the weekend. And that's why I'm rather off put on this. Oh no, that is what exists in our country. This amount of built up rage ready to explode if one little story like this is tossed at them. Yikes. Now, the other thing I have to say, and I know this sort of offends people, so I avoid language like this, but it has to be said, and this is what was just really sitting with me over the weekend. If Jesus were alive today, the Jesus documented in the Bible, that Jesus, if he were alive today, MAGA, or let me not be so vague, the people reacting with outrage to this story, Biden saying he respects trans people when it just so happens Trans Visibility Day that's been going on since 2009 fell on the same day as Easter Sunday in this particular year. If that makes you so angry, you would hate Jesus. You really would. He stood against the very judgmental vitriol that you're exhibiting. So I would do a little introspection on that. And I think he would encourage the very sort of respect that Joe Biden is exhibiting. And I know that upsets people, but it's just true. It really is. And so the second part of this story, okay, you had phase one, according to Fox News, of Biden's plan to destroy Easter, and that was turn it into Trans Visibility Day. Okay, so that, wild. Then part two was then he put on this Easter, or I guess Joe Biden did, an Easter egg art contest. That's what it was. Had a hard time bringing that up in my head. An Easter egg art contest. And he banished Christian symbolism from it. Bum, bum, bum. Now, the Fox correspondent already fact-checked this, but I'll do it again after we watch an example of the Fox News outrage on this part of the story.
More than a Catholic holiday, it's the holiest day on the Christian calendar. I mean, we share it with Catholics. It's our shared history.
I know.
So the New York Post with this, religious-themed designs banned from the White House Easter egg art contest. What in the world is that about?
More stupidity. Again, their main focus, along with losing 20% of the black vote, they are now losing by 4 or 5 points to the Hispanic vote. They thought that was going to be impossible.
Okay, so we've already addressed those talking points, but more stupidity is what he says. More stupidity, referring to the religious symbolism part of the Easter egg story. Now, because they care so little about facts and they respect their viewers so little, they didn't include that the rule that's being enforced and applied to this event is a rule that's been around for these sorts of events relating to the White House for 40 plus years. And Trump enforced the same rule in his administration at these sorts of events. And it just prevents certain religious imagery from being portrayed for obvious reasons, because in a general sense, the secular nature of the government make sure it doesn't favor certain religious symbols, and so it has to exclude those from events while still doing an Easter celebration, my goodness, but just preventing certain symbols from being portrayed. And that's something the Trump administration did. That's something the Bush administration did, etc. But they're acting like Biden did a new rule and said, no crosses, get them out of here. It's just so dishonest. Now, if you want to talk about disrespecting Easter, let's do a little comparison, okay? Let's compare first rational Biden statement, okay? Statement from President Joe Biden on Easter. Jill and I send our warmest wishes to Christians around the world celebrating Easter Sunday. Easter reminds us of the power of hope and the promise of Christ's resurrection. As we gather with loved ones, we remember Jesus' sacrifice. We pray for one another and cherish the blessing of the dawn of new possibilities. And with wars and conflict taking a toll on innocent lives around the world, we renew our commitment to work for peace, security, and dignity for all people. From our family to yours, happy Easter, and may God bless you. So just like his governance and just like his campaign should be uncontroversial, I'm sure Fox News could turn that into a controversy, but you then have Donald Trump's. Happy Easter to all, including crooked and corrupt prosecution judges that are doing everything possible to interfere with the presidential election 2024 and put me in prison, including those many people that I completely and totally despise because they want to destroy America, a now failing nation, like deranged Jack Smith, who is evil, and sick Mrs. Ronnie Wade, who said she hardly knew the special prosecutor, only to find that she spent years loving her. Or he spent years loving her long before the Georgia prosecution of President Trump began. That's false. I don't have to fact check this. I did in a past segment. And thereby making the case against me null, void, and illegal. And okay, you get the point. Raging about his legal troubles. So Biden, a beautiful message about Christ's resurrection, hope, uplifting people, whatever. Trump, I'm such a victim and the prosecutors like deranged Jack Smith are coming after me. But it's Biden who's disrespecting Easter. I don't know about that. One other example of the wackiness going on here. Here is first a clip from Fox News that they played of Karine Jean-Pierre's press conference. And then I'll show you some context they had left out.
And as a Christian who celebrates Easter with family, President Biden stands for bringing people together and upholding the dignity and freedoms of every American. Now, sadly, and it's not surprising, right? It is actually unsurprising that politicians are seeking to divide and weaken our country with cruel, hateful, and dishonest rhetoric. It is dishonest what we have heard the past 24 hours. It is untrue what we heard over the weekend.
And if it seemed like she was reading, that's because that was the same statement that we were all given as media yesterday, Karine Jean.
Oh my goodness. Can you imagine? Well, they cut off that clip right before something pretty interesting.
The weekend. And, we were at first, want to be very clear, confused on their coverage. We're grateful that Fox agrees with President Biden about the importance of recognizing Trans Day of Visibility. And I'll just quote something that Fox said. Back in 2021, they tweeted this: Trans Day of Visibility is dedicated to celebrating transgender people. To all
they were caught being slightly decent.
The transgender men, women, and non-binary folk, we see you and stand with you.
So Fox News tweeted that out, which proves two things. First of all, they've become even more crazy recently, where that would never be something they would send out now. But point two is they knew that this was not something that Biden started and was turning Easter into or something. And they knew that it had been going on for some time, since 2009. And so there it is. The difference could not be more clear. Biden, inclusive, welcoming, and focus on policies to improve all Americans' lives. And I'll keep saying this. Biden's campaign and his policy agenda is about improving all Americans' lives, including MAGA's lives. And that's what I'm focused on too. I think that we should get elected leaders in there who can implement policies to benefit everyone's lives, trans Americans' lives, MAGA's lives. Make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel.